Good afternoon. I hope you guys can hear me. I think we can start. And please note that I'm recording the session. I'll put it on as an announcement at the end of this class so that those who are not here, they can download it and be able to watch offline. All right. And should you wish to drop out for any reason, it's completely fine. I will add the link to this video. Okay. Okay. Not sure if you guys can see my virtual machine. If you guys can unmute yourself and confirm, that would be great. Anyone? Can you guys, did you see the virtual machine?
I can see it, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So I know we started an HR application. I've got a lot of people who were a little bit confused of what we were doing. So what I decided to do is to do a very small application that will cover all the concepts that we will need for that HR application. So we will do that application, but next time when we do it, we'll go full out so we can do like a real HR application. So however, this application, I designed this one. So I just wanted to show you how it works, and then this is what we're going to design here today together. It's very small, but if you follow along and you understand why we're doing certain things, you will be able to do any application that needs entity framework. So I'll just start this application. Please note that it uses a database. So everything that we needed to do with our application, it's the same thing, or job application. Just going to run it. And I'll just close. Just want to show you how it looks like. Okay. So this is how it looks like. So it's just a news application. You're going to enter the heading of a message. You enter your news article and then you click save, and then the message will appear here. So you'll notice that I used Bootstrap here. The one that we're going to do, it won't have Bootstrap. It won't look nice as this one, but I will show you a quick trick in how to fix this, so that you can be able to use Bootstrap as well. So what I'm gonna do is that I'll just type anything here, class, and then develop news application. So I'll just click save. You'll notice that there were green ticks there that appeared. That is JavaScript as well. It comes with Bootstrap. You don't have to know all of these things. You can use AI to assist you. So if I scroll down, you can see now there is a heading that says saved messages, and then it shows you the heading, and then also shows you the message that is supposed to pop up. So all of this information comes from a database. So let me just launch a database so we can check. Just want to check which database I connected to. Okay, it's called Get Messages. So guys, please note that what I'm going to do is the same across. So if you follow along, you will be fine with this. Might have a lot of messages inside there. That is fine. And then let me see, get message. Let me refresh. Okay, let's go back. Get message. Right. I'm not sure why it's not popping up yet, but I'll check a little bit later. But you can see that there are 3 messages there. So what I did with this application, I'm only displaying 1 message at the time. Of course, you can tweak it as much as you want, but I only tweaked one application. So guys, if you send a message or a chat, I can't see it because I'm running on a virtual machine. You are more than welcome to unmute yourself and then you can talk. So with that one said, let's start a new project. We're going with MVC again. So let's call these news articles. It's a very small application. I think we might be done within an hour. And then you guys, you can tweak it around, but the same knowledge, you can apply it with the HR. Maybe when we come back from a break, we can talk about it. And then I'll just go next. As always, you want to make sure that your authentication type is off and then untick the configure for HTTP. And then you can create your project. Okay. So what we need to do, the very first thing is to install the packages that we will need. By now, you should know by head what or which packages we're going to need for our project. So the easiest way to do that, you can go to under your solution explorer and then you right click your namespace or your project name, or you can go the other way, the tools one. So I'll show you the difference what this one does, but all of them, they lead you to the same thing. So you just click manage NuGet packages. So of course, at this moment, we don't have anything installed. When you click browse, so here's the difference with going the way to tools and all of those things, but I think it's the same thing, it doesn't matter. So IntelliSense, what it does, it suggests all the packages that are related or you might need for your project. So you don't necessarily need to search as long as you know which one you want. Like for instance, we know that we're going to install entity framework core.sql server. You can see it pops up there. We know that we're going to use entity framework core. It's there. I don't need the Newtonsoft JSON, but the last one that we're going to use, it is ef core.tools. So this one, the tools guys, it's the one that assists us to do our migration. And then your entity framework, this is the guy that's going to allow us to connect to our database. So it works together with your SQL server. So I'll just click it once. And then the only difference is that I don't have to take a project there. I can just hit install same time. And then I'll just accept. Okay, I'm not sure what happened with my, okay, let me just dog it here. I think that's about fine. Just want to increase the size. Sharp. And then that's the first one. I'll just go back and do the same thing. It's not supposed to do that, okay? And then we do entity framework core, install, apply, accept. Okay, it's done. We go back again. And then you install Microsoft.entity framework core.tools, install. All these packages, they will never change. You will need at least these 3 packages in order for you to develop an application that will use entity framework core or entity framework. So I know now we have all three of them. I'm happy with it. So since we're going to use a database, and we already know what we want to see inside of our table. So the first thing that we need to do is to create a model class that will work or represent our entity or a table. So we already know the drill. You're going to right click your model class, and then you're going for add, and then you say class. Again, just a reminder, why are you creating a model class? So your model class, since we know that we want our user to type in the heading of any article or any news article, and we also want them to type a particular message. So you want to separate this into different properties or columns in your table. So your heading, you want to make sure that you store your headings there, and then you'll have another column that will store the actual news article. You can add a lot, that is up to you. So class, it's going to help us represent that data structure that we need in order for someone to publish a news article. So it is a concrete class. So we're going to call this message. You can call it anything, it's fine. You just click that class and edit. Okay, so far so good. So we already know that we need a heading, we need an actual news article. So we know that. So here's the thing. Entity framework, it wants you all the time to represent your ID. That ID will serve as a primary key that they will use in order to link with your entire application. I think this has to do with when you run your application for the first time, the routing there, it points to the index and it uses an ID to map with it. But of course, there could be other reasons for why we need that. It's just that it prefers it. So you can do this in a couple of ways. The first one is that you will need to create an ID property. And that should be the first thing that you do. And the structure, it has to follow this capital letter I, small letter D. And then that will be your property. Another way is that if you don't like the ID framework, it does allow you in order to create your own customized primary key. But in order to do that, you will need to use your data annotation in order to tell entity framework that you're creating your own primary key. Either way, you still need to show or to represent a primary key. It needs that. So there are three ways. So I'll do all three of them and then leave one so that you can choose whichever one you want. So the first one, it's the one that we've been using. You can type prop, press tab in order to get the first property. So this is the first one. These will save as our primary key. Primary key. Again, this will be used to identify each news article record. So this, it's not looking at a heading or a column. It just takes everything that makes up an article. So we're going to get different types of article per ID. That is the first way. The second one is that I can do prop again. And then we'll say, okay, I want to use my customized ID. So I can say maybe use ID. So what's happening here is that please don't do this. I'm just showing you that you can have your own customized. You only need one primary key. So if you don't like the default one, you can create your own. This is your, I'll comment that one out. This will be my primary key. But what's going to happen is that if you leave it like this, you're going to get an error because it doesn't recognize news ID. It only knows ID. So if you want to use your own, again, as I explained, you need to use your data annotation. And in order to do that, you do your square bracket, and then you're going to type key. So you can remove that. You only need to specify key. So you'll see there the top, what has been added is you have using system.component model.data annotation. This is where the key is coming from. So when you leave it like this, it will know that this is supposed to be a primary key. You are fine with this one. That is the second one. And then the third one is that prop. The third one should always mirror the name of your class. So I'll take the name of my class, put it there, and add ID at the end. In that way, this will work. By itself, it will recognize that you are dealing with a primary key. I'll repeat again. If you use this one, make sure that the name of you start with the name of a class, and then you'll add ID at the end. It will know by itself that this is a primary key. It's just another way, guys, that I wanted to show you that you can use your primary key. You don't have to always go with ID, but of course it saves time. And then we need the heading. So this, of course, will be a string. And then we can say heading. And then this will be news heading. And then lastly, prop, that will be a string. And then that will be our news or description, whatever you want to call it, description. So this is the one that will represent an actual article. So you only need that, nothing more. So a lot of people, they get pissed with this. I know, Ethan, if you are here, you might not be you might be crying now. Why do we have the green squiggly line there? It's not a problem. So you can leave it like that, or you can remove it. But the problem is that if you want to remove it, you can add a question mark to say that that field can be nullable. So I'm going to leave it like this because I want all fields to be completed. But if it bothers you, you can just put a question mark there. That question mark says you can leave that field blank. It won't cause any issues. So I'm just going to leave that, and then, or you can use the data annotation as well. That is called required if you want to force users to type in. But either way, this as well will work as well. So just save my model class, and then I'll close it. So now we have our own data representation. So what we need to do now, since we know that we are going to connect to a database, whichever process you want, you can go and create a database now, or you can create a DB context. We did talk about what is a DB context. Remember that your DB context is the guy that manages, that holds all the configurations or the settings that you will need in order to perform your queries into your database. I've went through this in class just to get you guys to understand how it works, and also the structure of this, it doesn't change, it's always the same. So do so the first one, when we did put our class, a DB context, it's a class name, it's an inbuilt class, so we need to inherit the class. So because we're dealing with data, a lot of people prefer to put it inside of the model because that is where we're interacting with data. But today, I'm going to create a folder where we're going to put our DB context. This does not matter. If you prefer to put it inside of your models, that is okay. So I'm going to create a folder where I'm going to add our DB context. In order to do that, you will right click the name of your solution, and then you'll go to add, and then you'll go to new folder. So we're going to call this folder data. Then you can just press enter. So inside of this folder, I'm going to right click again, and then we say add. I want to add a concrete class that will represent my DB context, or just add a class. So you can call this anything you want. So I'll call this app, I'll call mine appdb all the time, appdb context, because it's easy for me to remember. You can call it anything. So I'll just click add. So now we have our concrete class that we need to use. So the first thing that I want to do is that if you're using Visual Studio 22, I'll just press at the beginning of my namespace, and then I'll press enter again, just to open there the top. I need to import my entity framework. It does it automatically, but it's easier if you do it yourself so that you don't have errors. So the first thing I'll say, using Microsoft dot entity framework core. Remember, we're dealing with the Microsoft Entity Framework Core in terms of our databases. So you want to import it so that you can be able to use it. And then another thing is that I need to import the solution, the project itself, because I'm going to reuse some of the fields, the name of the class, all of these things. So I don't want to have errors. So I'll just do it now. Say using the name of your project. So you say using, what is the name of my project? It's called news articles dot models. You don't have to do this. IntelliSense is going to assist you, but it gets easier if you do it like this, because you know that you're going to use this as time goes. So that's it. So we have our appdb context, and we know that this class must be able to implement or inherit from a DB context that comes with Visual Studio. So you will press tab there. If IntelliSense suggests it, you'll realize that I don't have an error. It is because I've already imported this statement. But if you don't have it, you just click it there, right click, and then you click where it says quick actions and refactoring. And then the first thing that will pop, it will say using Microsoft.Entity Framework Core. You double click it, it will import it for you. So what are we saying now? We're saying DB context class, it is our parent class. So this parent class, it has all the settings that we will need, or anything, any configuration that we might need in order to communicate with our database. So what are we saying? Okay, we're forming a relationship between DB context, appdb context, to this parent. So this is a child and this is a parent. So with that one said, now you're going to do dependency injection. So you need to inject your database options. We don't have them, they are inside here. Even though now you have a relationship, in order for you to get money from your parents, you don't go and steal it. You ask and then they give it to you. If you steal it, you're a thief. So the same concept, it works like that. You go and ask and then they give you money. That is what dependency injection does. So how do we inject um, the money that we need from our parent? We do that by you creating a constructor, and then inside of that constructor, we're going to the process that you take to go and ask money from your parents. We're going to import that as a parameter, and then once we get an answer to our parent, we'll use that answer in order to use our money. I hope that logic makes sense. But you need a constructor in order to inject um, the settings or whatever you need inside of your DB context parent class. So let's do that. I'll just type CTOR and then you press tab. This will give you the constructor, And as I said, that we need to do dependency injection. Okay, so that will allow us to get all the database options or configuration or settings that we might need. And in order to do that, you're going to borrow what is called DB context options. So you need to make sure that it has angle brackets because we need to pass in a type. And then that type, it's saying, okay, what do we need to inject inside there? So we're going to inject this class that we created because we're going to use this in order to get the settings that we need. So I'll copy the name of the concrete class that we just created, and then you're going to pass it inside of your angle brackets. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So, and then once you're done that, what you want to do is to give these settings a name, this parameter. So you can give it any name. I prefer to use option. That is a standard. A lot of people use this. That's why it's suggested there, but you can give any name. And then this name that we have there, we're going to use it in order to gain the settings that we need into our database. But that is not done. So since we are injecting this child class so that we can get the settings from our DB context, you need to specify that you're doing your dependency injection to the parent class. And how do you do that? You put your colons in front and then you type base, your inheritance days, and must come back. So your base is going to represent the parent class, which is your DB. And then you're saying, I'm going to pass in the option because the option is the one that holds everything now. This option and this option is the same. Remember that this statement now, it sits inside of this option. And then that's it. Let me see if I can. There we go. Hope that gives enough space. Sharp. So here you can leave it empty. There's nothing much there that we're going to do. Then lastly, what we need to do now is to use dbset in order to represent all our news articles in our table. So this is the guide that we're going to use in order to create the table. When we do migration, data migration, it's going to look at dbset and get the class model that we created and form a table for us. So in order to do that, you just say, but make sure that you have a public access specifier, because if you don't do it, it assumes that it is protected. And then you will have an issue when you do your migration. So you say public db set, and then it must have angle brackets. And then inside there, what are you passing? You're passing your model class that you have. So my model class is called message. So you gotta make sure that you pass it exactly as it is. Message, because this is the model that represents our table structure. And then you wanna make sure that you give it a name. You usually can give it any name, but please make sure you remember that name. I'll choose the capital letter M and I'll do my get and setters. That's it with your DB context. So a quick revision. We created a concrete class which is called FDB context, and then this class, it is responsible for with our databases. I know we don't have a database yet, but we will create that in a moment. So, and then this concrete class, it inherits from the DB context. And then we did do dependency injection, and then our DB set, it will help us to get a collection of all news articles, objects that we're going to create. And then when you look at this statement again that represent our dependency injection, all of it. That statement, we injecting it using our constructor, which allows us to connect to our database. So that's that. Then you're going to save this, and then you're going to close it. So now we're going to create a database. So I'll open my SQL Server, and then I'll just wait for you guys in case you are starting. We are almost done, guys. If you, I'm not going to give you a break because this is an online one. If you feel like you want to go quickly, you can go and come back. I just want us to finish this quickly, and then you can have a nice Friday. So I'll just right click databases, and then I'll say new database, and then we're going to call this news article DB. And then once you're done, you're going to click OK. So we have our database, that is fine. Some people who are comfortable with creating databases using a query, you can do that on your site. There is no problem. All right. So now, sorry about that. So we need to go back into our Visual Studio. I'll just close that. So now we need to connect to our database, and in order to do that, we use what we call connection string. So inside of our connection string, we need to create a connection string so that it maps with our database that we just created now. And to do that, you're going to use your app settings.json. So you're going to double click it, and then I'll press at the beginning of my open curly brace and press enter. And then what I'm going to do, I'll add my double quotations. And you'll notice that the moment you add your double quotation, it says to you connection string. And then within that connection string, you have a message that says get connection string with the I configuration dot get connection string. And then it says you pass in string extension method. You will see why this is important. The reason I'm reading that in a moment. So now it suggests to you that, okay, as much as you're allowed to create your own connection string, you can create anything. But it says that, but I'm suggesting that you use connection string. So I will highly recommend that go with that. You double click connection string, and you'll see that it pops you out of the double quotes. And then what does that one mean? It tells you that now you need to specify, because remember your dictionary, how it works in a sense that key value pairs. So what's going to happen is that you need to provide a key, and then you also need to provide a value for that key. And then whenever we want to get the content of that particular record, we're going to use our key that it's going to give us information of what we want. So you'll see here logging, that is a key, and you see it by that semicolon that just pops in front of it. And inside the curly brace, that will be your value. And then you have a key again here, and then you have a value. So always think like that. The first time I have a key, which is this one. So when I press the colon, there are curly braces that are open for me with a comma. It knows that I like IntelliSense. So okay, we have that. And then the first thing that you need to do is to create the connection instead, which is the value we're supplying a value now. So I'll just open my double quotes. So now we're going to give it a name. You can give it any name here, any name, it will suffice. It's okay. So I'll go with the default one, which is called the default connection, but you can type anything as long as you're going to remember this name. Okay, and then I'll just go out. That will save as a key again. And then I'll just apply my colons. And then after supplying a colon, it says, okay, now I'm expecting a value for this. What is it that you want to add? So we'll say, okay, we need to supply a server name. So you just type server, you put an assignment operator. This will come from our database. So you just go back to your SQL. You need to get a server name. The easiest way is that in front of connect, there is this twin plug icon. You're going to click it once, and then it's going to take you to this window. And you can see what is highlighted there. That is your server name. Control C. And then you go back, and then you'll paste it. Control V. So we have our server name, and you notice that the cursor jumped outside of our closing code. You want to go back inside. We are not done. So you will need a server name, you need a database, and all the securities that are needed when it comes to a database. All of our SQL, somehow it's been configured to use SSL. And then also, so we need to specify that we trust the connection. Um, so you just close it by a semicolon, like that. Semicolon. That's the first statement. The second statement is that you're going to represent your database. Let's call this database. Please make sure that your spelling is correct. Then let me just move this, put an assignment operator, and then we're gonna go back and check what is the name of our database. So I'm just going to select it and say rename, copy, and then go back, or you can type it. I don't prefer that because I always misspell something. And then I'll close that statement. So now what we need to do is that we need to say trusted connection. We set that to true. So say trusted underscore connection, and then we'll set this to true. And then you close. Lastly, you say trust server certificate assign true, and then you close. That's it. If you don't have the trust server certificate, it's going to cry. Sorry. So that's it. You just save and then you close it. All right. So that is that. So what is next now is since we created a DB context and then we did our dependency injection, if our application was complete now and we go and run this application, get an error saying that it doesn't recognize that service. So the best thing is for us to go and register our service. And in order to do that, you'll go to program.cs. Notice the steps that I followed. It's very important that you follow them because if you don't, it will frustrate you so much. So please make sure that you follow it. Yeah, again, guys, this is very important. Remember the ID that I was talking about is that one there. So, but here you don't need to tweak with anything. The only code that you need to look for is this one there. That says that you must add a service to the container. And with that, you're going to add in between the builder and the var app. So please make sure that you have a space there. Don't touch anything. If you do that, you're going to break your application. So now let's register our service. This statement, it is the same. It doesn't change. The same way as they register the service for add controller with views is the same way that we're going to do it as well. So you just say builder, you put a dot, we adding what? Services. And then you put a dot. What services or what type of services that you have added, We talked about the three types of services in a few class. I think transient and then scoped and then singleton. You don't have to add that. Remember that we're dealing with DB context now. So you want to add that DB context as a service. So what you do is that you type DB context. That's the one that you are adding. And then you realize that when I typed DB context, let me just do it again. When I put a dot there and I say DB context, let's say DB add DB context. Realize that it has the angle bracket, meaning that it's expecting you to provide a type there. So our services, which is the DB context, they add DB context. This is a concrete class that we created inside. So what is it that you want to pass inside of that? You go back to, is your model class. There you go. So you have a class there that is called add DB context. So you go back again. You want to pass that class that you just created, which is make sure that you type it exactly as it is. So what did I call mine again? AppDB. So it's AppDB context. So make sure that it is the same. Let me just remove it. Because this says to app. There we go. It needs to turn green. Okay, so we have our class that we just created, and then we have to do a lambda expression. So I will suggest that since we have used option there in order to hold all the options that we'll need, all the configuration, go with that. So just type options, or you can type anything here, that is up to you. I'm just creating a lambda expression method that I'll use in order to get a default connection. This is where I'm going. So you'll see option must go into, you type option. Let me just do this and move this below there. So options must go to options, which is what we have. And inside the option, what do you want to use? Okay, so what you want to use is the SQL, which is it's called the use SQL server. So let me just explain there a bit what is a use SQL server, or why do we need to do it. The use SQL, first of all, it's a method that comes with entity framework. So what it's going to do is that it will tell our concrete class that we created, the DB app DB context, to use SQL server, our database management systems, meaning that we can be able to use all the queries or all the language that we use with our databases. So it needs us to pass in a connection string that we created inside of our app.json. So that connection string, it will be able to use it in order to connect to the database that we just created, therefore allowing us to do our syntax queries, anything that we'll need, or your CRUD function, because everything is based on that. Again, your option, the arrow, it is a lambda expression that is going to specify the additional settings or configuration that you might need to use inside of your database. Okay, so you'll say, and then you put a full stop, and then you type use SQL. Okay, I made a mistake there, and you guys, you just keep quiet. So, okay, so let's redo that. Remember, this is a constraint, it's mimic our constructor name, the same thing that we have done. So inside there, we're going to say option, again, arrow function, and then I'll just move it here, and then we'll say options dot. What do we need? Use SQL. I just explained now. So you press that, and then this is a method. as I've explained. So you need to make sure that you have an open bracket and a closed bracket. So in case you get a red squiggle error there, again, you will need to install the use SQL, the SQL server and the tools as well. You can just click and then you'll get the quick action again, and then it'll just give you what you need to input. So inside of our method, remember, this is where we specify the additional configuration or methods that we might need. Once again, for those who joined late, I'm not going to give you guys a break because this is a recorded session. So we are almost done. As soon as we are done, or if you want to step away, you can do that. The moment you join, it saves your name. I'll be able to tick you in a register. So if you don't finish, you'll see the recording. I think it will take 30 minutes after I end this session. And then you can be able to find it and you'll watch at your convenient time. So, okay, the settings that I want now, I need to get my connection string that is inside of my JSON file. And in order to do that, I'll say, okay, I'm going to use builder and I'll say dot configuration. I'm adding additional configuration. And inside of this configuration, I'll just put a dot and say get. Remember, here, here, this connection string. Remember what I said when I read, it says connection string configuration. This is what I'm doing now. It says get connection string with the I configuration dot get connection string, and you pass a string. So this we have that is our builder. It comes from this I interface. And then we say dot, I want to get this method. And then this method will allow me to pass in a string. And what string am I passing? That's the one that I'm passing. So, okay, that will dot get config connection string. And then the connection string, it's a method. We've seen that it wanted us to pass in a string. And we know that when we're dealing with a string, you need to pass in your double quotes. And then what are we passing there? We already know. You go back to your app.json and you get the name that you have created there as a value. So for me, I called mine default connection. You want to make sure you copy it. Guys, please make sure. You want to make sure that you copy it instead of typing so that you don't make a spelling mistake. Otherwise, your database won't connect. That's it. So a little bit of revision again. So what is important here is that when you open your program, it is when you want to register your services. You want to make sure that you do it under the comment where it says add services to the container. You'll find two statements: builder.services, add controllers with views, and then you'll also find var app equals to builder.com. So you notice that builder is used a lot, which is where it says the I configuration interface. So what happened is that this, in a nutshell, what it does is that we can say this is a method that will allow you to register your AppDB context created. And remember that the AppDB context, it comes with dependency injection. Okay. So we know that we've talked about that. So, and then the options there that I explained, that is a Lambda expression that allows us to get additional settings that we might need with our database. And the reason that I'm using use SQL Server, it is because it will allow me to interact with Entity Framework Core. So what it will do is that it will tell the AppDB context to use SQL Server as my database management systems. We know what your database management system comes with. And then that's it that you need to know with that one. Okay, and then you'll hit save and then clean your screen. All right, so now what is coming now, it's very important because now we have to create a controller. We'll do the migration lastly, so that we can be able to use our FDB and create all the views. So remember that the controller is just an agent that sits in between and translate or transport the request that comes from the user. So that is what we need to do. So now let's create a controller. We know where the controller sits. We don't have to talk about that. So let me just dock this, and then I'll close and right click my controller. I'm adding a controller, and then I'll just add it like that. So remember that we adding a controller so that it can be able to handle the input. What is the input? This is the data that the user will submit, and then it will take that input and then display it using the views. This is the most important component of MVC. So okay, I'm going to create an empty controller. So when we come back, or if I have time during the test week, I will record a video that will use scaffolding with this one. It will help you a lot, by the way, so you can try it as well. So I'll just add an empty one, and then we talked about that we don't want that one there. Whatever name of your controller must assume the suffix name as controller. All right, so let's call our controller message. You'll notice that I named my message. I'm also naming my controller as message as well. It's a good practice to do that. So just click add, and then our controller comes with the index page, which is going to take us to this view. If you right click there and say go to view, it will say that this view does not exist because we have not created this view, but we're going to add that. So before we do that, I'm going to import the statements that I know that we're going to use. So again, the system can do this for you. I just prefer to do that. System dot link. I know we're gonna use it, and then I'll say using the namespace or the name project, which is news article. I want to use the model for this project name, all of it. So that's why I'm importing that. And then lastly, using news articles dot data, and then we close. You don't have to do this, it will do it for you, but it saves you some time. So okay, now the first thing that we need to do when we are dealing with this is that since we have our FDB context that holds that inherits our DB context there, what we want to do is to ensure that the database, it is used to interact with that FDB context class that we use. It used to interact with our database. So I'll just go in inside of this class. So that's what I'm going to do now. So for the purpose of encapsulation, I want to protect my database connection so that whenever an instance is issued or when the application is running, the user can be able to read my data inside of the database, that they can't change the structure of my database. So I'm going to use this as private as my access modifier. And then I'll just say this, I want these to be read only for the same reasons that I just explained. I want them to be able to read. So you're going to call the class, which is the concrete class that we created, which is FDB context. And then you're going to give it a name. Preferably, you want to go with underscore context. You can give it anything, that is fine. So remember that this statement, it ensures that the database context class that we created is able to interact with our database in read-only format. Sharp. Then press enter. And then the next thing that you need to do is to do dependency injection so that your database, it is accessible through this variable name if you want to name that you just created. We're doing this because of security reasons. So I'm going to type CTOR and then I press enter to get a constructor. And then inside of my constructor, the same thing that we've done inside of that class, that is the same thing that we're going to do now. So say fdb, which is what we're injecting, fdb. So now I'm going to call it context, or you can call it anything. So we're going to link these two so that we can be able to interact with our database in a read only. So that is what is left. There's db context, and then you assign these two values so that they are equal. So I can use this in order to able to read the content, but I won't be able to change what is the structure of my database. That's it. So now we're done with that. I'll go down. Let me add comments now. So what's going to happen now is that I'm going to use a get method to be able to show the messages to the database DB. Okay, so that's what I need to do. Remember, you don't have to specify the get method in nodes now if you don't specify. The only thing that's needed to specify is the post method. It's not really a method, by the way. Just forgot the actual name that that it's referred to. But what I'm talking about is this HTTP. Yeah, you don't have to do that. So okay, let's create. So say public. You know the drill. I action. Ooh. Public I action result. Then let's create a method here. So we're going to call this method create, because this is the one that we're going to use in order to create a message. Okay, so we're cool with that. And then, so what I want you to know, guys, is that this method will be used in order to display and get all the methods that we're going to capture, just like I showed you guys when we ran this application at the beginning. So I'm not going to do anything fancy here. What I want to do is that I want to be able to create a new message. Let's say a new news article object. That's what I want to do. And in order to do that, I'm going to create a variable using var. Then we're going to say new message equals to new message. Where is this message coming from? If you guys still remember, in our model there. All right, so we have that. The only thing that we need to do, it is to return this particular view. Return view message. It's very important that you pass in this message, because that's the one that will get the new news article. That's it. That's it. So now, in fact, I can change this one because we don't need it. So what I want to do now, because we're going to enter the news article using a form. So what I'm going to do now, we're going to post or save the news article using a form. Okay, using a form. And then, so let's change this guy there. We need to call it create. The only difference is that now we're going to pass in our model class, which is called message. And then you can give it a name like that. So I'm just going to remove this for now. Because you're going to post something and at a form, this one you need to specify. So you just have to put HTTP post. Whenever you have using a form that you're going to send in data back, remember that this form will be used to capture whatever the user types in and put it inside of a database. You want to make sure that you use the HTTP post so that it takes it and store it inside of your database. So, all right. So what I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to use error handling because I've seen that this class causes a lot of issues. Sometimes it couldn't connect to a database. So when you use like error handling, sometimes you can get lucky so that it tells you where's the issue. Because this is where the problem is going to arise. I can guarantee you that your data might not pop up inside of your database, which is annoying. So what I'm gonna do now is that whenever a user is capturing the data inside of their form, it is your duty to ensure that they capture all the fields. And in order to force that, you use what we call a model state. You want to make sure that what they are typing there is valid before we can be able to send that particular data into our database for security reasons. So I'm going to do the very same thing. Let me just put a comment and say, you're going to check if the form data that is captured by the user is valid. You don't want SQL injection here. Let me get this out of the line. So in order to do that, you're going to use an if statement. You say if it's called model state. You can go and read about it a bit. So it contains the state of the model and the model binding validation. Model state is valid. It checks that by itself. And then now I can use my try and catch. This is where I'm going to capture my data. And then I'll just put my catch statements there. You don't have to do this, but it's good practice. And then the try catch, I'm not going to write anything. I'll just put exceptional. And then I'll just print just a normal message because I want it to tell me what is the issue. So I can say ex.message. This will help me to troubleshoot should we have an error. So the trick comes here. So the first thing that you need to do, remember that DB set that we have done. So you want to make sure that whenever message, it goes to that DB set and then it will be stored inside of our database. So let me add a comment and say add new news article to DB set. And how do you do that? Remember the underscore context that we have there. And then you put a full stop. You want to edit to, it goes inside of your messages that we just created. And then you say add message. That is what it's going to do. Okay. This message is name, in case that you are confused, where is it coming from? Is this guy there? Because we're dealing with their database set now. All right. So the next thing we want to save. So we want to save the data input from user. In order to do that, your DB context plays a big role here. You can see it tells you that underscore context.save changes. And then lastly, we want to make sure that when it's done, it returns the user back to adding another news article. So you just say return. Hey, I can't write the return. Return. And then you say redirect to action. And then we don't have index. Remember, we remove it. So you want it to come back to this guy. So you notice that we still have an error there. So you move out of your if statement and then you just say return a view message, which is this guy that we have passed in. So it will check everything when it's done, validated, the message is there, everything is good there. It will just return that particular form. I hope I'm not losing you guys. We are okay. So we are almost done, almost done. So the one thing that is left now, it is for us to add forms. Form or your views, however way you want to call them, that is the very thing that we need to do at this moment, and then we complete. And then the last thing that we're going to do is to run our migration, because so far it doesn't recognize our database, unfortunately. So let's create our forms quickly. So this one, I want to move a little bit quickly for the form's name, but we're going to need one form, not a lot, just one form. I think that will be enough. So let me get the Solution Explorer. This is your HTML that must come into play. Let me close there. So here's the best thing that you can do for yourself. Your forms or your views must go into your views. So I'm going to create a folder there, and then I'll just call this. I want to assume the name of my model. I called mine message, so I'm still going with that now. So again, here I want to add the views. So I'll just say add view. Again, we're gonna go with the empty one now. This one is when you want to do your scaffolding. So just go with an empty one. So you can call it anything you want. So I'm gonna call mine not anything you want. Let me retrace that. It's very important. Let me close there. Let me go back. So what we were doing now inside of our controller should be your reference. We created one method per se. It's called create. So your view, guys, if I right click here now and say go to view, it says it doesn't exist. So this is what we need to create now. So I'll copy that name, go to my message, right click, add, and then we say view, add, and then you want to call it exactly as it is. We don't want it like that. You can write create, guys. And one thing that I've noticed is that if you add one small space, it will take it, but when you go and run, it crashes. So we don't need anything there. So now I want to use all the modules that I have that exist inside of my solution. In order to do that, remember that now we need to render a C# into our HTML code. So our Razor Pages doesn't know C#. And in order for us to do that, we need to tell it that we are rendering our C# so that it can transform that into an HTML. And how do we do it? So whenever we want to move from HTML to C#, we use the @ sign. I'll repeat again. Whenever you want to use C#, you'll use the @ sign and then you type whatever you do. That's your C#. But if I do this like H1 text, this is HTML. I don't need to use that because Razor Pages are HTML. So the moment you want to do anything that uses C#, you need to tell it by using the @ sign. So for now, I want to use all the models that exist inside of my solution. I'm gonna call the name of my project, which is news articles, and then I'll say dot models. This is a very important name. Dot. Now I want to call the model class that I created. It is very important that you do it like this. Otherwise, it won't recognize the fields that are inside of your model. A table there, but not yet, but in theory. We have not created our database now. So now I'm not doing CSS now. You can do that by yourself. So I'll just add, let me say H3. H3 text, we can say add news article. Okay. And then now because I'm going to use a form to allow the user to type in there. So I'll use a form. So a form, inside of this form, what I'm going to do is that the form will be used to post data in order to send it into our database. So I'm going to use ASP. This is Bootstrap, ASP action, which is the action method, which is the method that you want to get. Again, you go back to your controller, you see what method do you want to post to. It's create. So you gotta type it exactly as it is, which is create there for us. And then what type of method do you want? I want to post that data. So you're going to say post, which is why we did this post there. Okay. Then I'll close so that I can have my form. So I'm going to use the div tags now to format my form. I will rush through this. This is HTML, guys. And then inside there, I'll add a label of my form because a form needs a label. So I'll use ASP4. And then again, the ASP4, this will help you to get the property inside of your model. So you don't want to do your ID. We don't want it. So if you look at our model class now, it's that one, we have headings. So I'll just copy that heading, go inside of my create and pass it there. That is the heading that I want to have. And then that will save as my label. So I can just type heading. So this is just a static text. It has nothing to do with your code. It's just what is going to appear. So you can type anything you want here. That is up to you. But this one should model the one that comes inside of your controller. All right. And then now, because it's a form, someone needs to put in data. So you need to use input. What is the type of the input that you're expecting? I'm expecting text from a user. And then I'm going to use ASP action again so that we can get our headings. Paste there. And then this is now where I'm forcing the user. That's if inside of your model you didn't put required. So now I want the user to type in this heading. So you can add required. This is not important. So your input is a self-closing tag, meaning that you have to close it like this. It doesn't have the closing tag like this one. You just put a // and then you close. All right. So now the formatting where the heading is supposed to stay, that you do it yourself, but this is the best one that can do the job. Again, don't worry about this. I'll show you a quick way to go around this validation, and then I'll go with heading. And then you will say a class. This is Bootstrap. Again, I'm going to force you guys to use Bootstrap. So Bootstrap, I want the text to have a danger color. This is the red color. It comes with Bootstrap, by the way. So that's it. That is the first one. And then we close our div there. So I'm going to do the same thing for, this is the heading for a description. I'll share the code with you. I'm just running now because we don't have time. So model description, and then you're going to change there. What did I do? Copy, paste, paste, and then paste. And then we're going to change here and we say news article. Sure. And then after this div, we need to allow the user to submit, of course. So I'll add a button. And then you need to specify the type, which is submit, so that the user can be able to submit this. Sorry. and then you close and you say save news or whatever you want. Right. So now remember that the very last thing that it needs to show all the saved methods. So comments here, you can edit in two ways, guys. You can add this and this, that it's a comment, everything that you type. Oh no, not that. It has to be two of these, but the easiest way it's this one, like your HTML. Then you can type that's your comment if you want to add comments inside of your form. So now I want to switch to C#. So I'm going to use the @ sign, and then I'll say if the model that we've been using, if the model is not equals to null, meaning that we have a message and not string dot is null or empty. I'll explain this in a moment. And then we'll say model dot heading dot heading. Let me go down a bit because it won't fit. And not string dot is null or empty. And then we'll say model, we get our description dot description. And then we can have our h2, and then we can say view saved news articles. And then in order to save, I'll explain now, in order to save our articles, we're going to put this inside of our div. And then inside of our divs, we'll get our h3, which is a little bit smaller. And then we use our add, we say model dot heading, it'll give us a heading. And then I'll get this description as well. Dot description. Okay, that is an if statement. So else means that we don't have anything. So else, then we're going to have a text that will pop up. So you can say you have not saved any news article yet. So we have that one, and then we are done. So you can simplify this statement by using a for each loop. I just had a whole lot of issues where I was using the for each loop. It does the same thing. So what happens is that, remember that our model that I said we must import there, the top, it's the one that assists me to get in it. So we're saying if the model that we have saved our data, it's not null, because it's not supposed to be null either way, and it's it is string, it is null or empty, we're going to check our heading if it has something or it doesn't have something, but we want to force it to have something so that we can be able to fetch the data that it has, and then we're going to display our heading, our description. Or if this statement fails, meaning that or either one, the heading or the news article is empty, but either way we said this should be required, by the way. So that's why we're going for both sides. So if the user does not type anything for the description, then it means that we're not going to have this section. Lastly, guys, lastly is to do your migration. So you're going to go to Tools, NuGet, Package Manager, and then your console. And then you're going to say Add Migration and call it anything you want. Just gonna call mine ini. And then wait. If everything goes well, it should pass. Okay, so far so good. And then lastly, you're going to say update database. Database. Okay, there we go. So now, here's the thing. On your views, let's run this. Ooh, I forgot to link. Oh, you can do this and say message, and then we call create. There we go. Well, the best way, guys, to do this, if you forget, just go to, let me collapse everything. And then under your views, you have a folder that is called chat. Drop it down. You go to your layout. This is where, when I say use Bootstrap, this is where you're going to put it. So now we have two buttons there. It's home and privacy. If you look there, we have home and privacy. So now you're going, since we know that this one works, so each button goes inside of a list. I'm going to copy the last one and then press enter, paste. We only have one there. So the where you need to change, it's the ASP controller. Where is it coming from? So you're going to look at your controller. Remember, you created, that's why I said that the name, the message, I called it message there as well. For that reason, it makes it easy. So I'll just call message. It goes to this folder, this folder. It looks at the views. And then inside of this folder, what do I want? I want an action method that is called create. And then privacy, this is the name that appears. So we can say add news or something, anything you want. And then I can right click and says hot reload on file, save. So we can just go back there and do that. Oh, not that, save, should pop up. There we go. So if I click there, you can see now it pops up. It's ugly, but it does what it's supposed to. You have no message yet. So here's the quickest way to fix this. I'm not sure if this will send to a database. So if it doesn't send, your job is to go and fix it. See, it didn't save to our database. This is the problem that I was saying we might experience it. Okay. Let's see. We don't have anything there. All right. It's gonna take a little bit of time to troubleshoot this. Let's do it again. Not again. Okay. All right, let me show you the bootstrap one and then we'll fix this. I think you can fix the issue is the connection string. It's not reading the database. So what you can do now, you can use any AI of your choice. I prefer Ninja. Okay. And then you don't want to change anything else except your views because that's the one that you need to make it look nice. I'll copy everything and then go back there and say add bootstrap bootstrap to make UI look nice, whatever you want to do, and then just paste everything. This is where you use your AI ethical. So you gave it your own code, and then you just wanted to add bootstrap. I expect you guys to do this. It saves you a lot of time. So let's just wait for it. Okay, it's done. So I'm gonna copy this code, go back to Visual Studio, paste it, and then save. Notice that it didn't do anything. So now when we go back to our news article, so you can see our UI now looks a little bit better, which is good. So the only issue now is to get this to connect to our database. There we go. It works now. I don't know why it didn't want to work the first time, but hey. So there you go. That's it, guys. I will share this code with you. All right. Any question? There was a question there. All right. Any question, guys? No question. Either way, there's even few students here. But thank you guys for attending this class. So I'll add this recording, and then I'll also add the question for that HR system. And then during the break, if you have time, just try to follow the same thing as I was doing and try to attempt it and see if you can fix it. But if you can, that will be fine. We're going to do that. And then, as I said, that when we come back, it's going to be a full function for HR system, which is going to mimic the same thing that you guys are supposed to do for your POE. All right. See you guys in 2 weeks. Enjoy your rest. And thank you, everyone.